Okay, welcome to our last lesson in this unit, and what we're talking about today is the idea of validity and reliability. We started the unit talking about this. This is the big idea in the unit, and so this is really what we want to make sure that you understand. So what you're going to be asked to do is to look at a conclusion or a finding from a company or survey or some kind of study and question the validity and reliability of this. It's a tremendous skill to develop. You want to make sure that you not only don't just blindly read things, you're also an advocate in your life, and it's really my goal for every one of you is to be an advocate for the truth. And so when there is a statement made out there, and it could be about anything, whether that be very impactful and very meaningful, or a very dangerous statement as well. And we have to make sure that we really question the validity and reliability. So we're going to practice that, and I want to make sure you understand why. The big idea here is variability is inherent in data, so bias is inherent in data. It needs to be controlled by reliable and valid sample. Reliable, valid sample, questioning techniques, survey. Do you know what it means to have reliable and valid data? Can you incorporate the concepts of this unit to discuss what it means for data to be reliable and data to be valid, and the relationships those terms have with variability? If there's one thing you need to take away from this course, this is it. And the reason why I think this is such a big thing is when you talk about knowing data management, understanding studies, you have to talk about validity and reliability. So they do have different definitions. They're not just how reliable things are or how true they are. Variability is the extent to which things are different. So there could be a study, and if you observe it differently than me, there's variability there. There's a lot of studies done out there that could have been done differently. Reliability is the extent to which more results of a study can be duplicated. To which results of the study can be duplicated, and more trials will produce more accurate data. Validity is the extent to which the data represents the opinions, and so it's the extent to which the sample represents the population. Reliability is that law of large numbers, duplicating the results. It's like a fair die, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is reliable because you can duplicate those results. If you roll it 100 times, you know what to expect. But if you do it more, you'll get that more often. More trials, the better. If it's not reliable, more trials maybe would be worse. And that's the idea, and that goes in hand too with the validity, the sample representing the population. So what we've seen so far is that there's variabilities in conclusions, the way we play with the scale on the graph using a circle graph, the way we show it, we can demonstrate it in different ways. We can also just take different things out of conclusions. I could be sitting in a room with somebody, listening to somebody talking about something, and I can get a totally different feeling out of there, or different conclusions from what they're saying than another person watching. Maybe I didn't pay attention to something. And so there's variability in our experiences. Variability in sampling. Depending on the sample that we take from the population, the biases are present in the sample. So it can be a lot of differences in the sampling that we use. What you need to be able to do is, if I give you a context or a situation, we're going to call this critically analyze the results. And that's based on bias, which is really variability, and reliability and validity. So given some context, discuss what these ideas mean and why they're important to data management. I'd be able to provide examples using extremes to demonstrate a point. And what are the conclusions that need to be asked? What are the questions that need to be asked? Make sure you apply the definitions. I need to know that you understand what valid, reliable, and bias mean. And compare maybe a good study to a not so good one. And so that's what we do throughout the unit is really just look at something that's very biased, something that's not as biased, something where the bias is truly we tried to eliminate it. And so I like this idea of using extremes to demonstrate a point, because it's just like me asking you, and we ask you throughout the unit. Give me a certain like a cluster sample that's very biased, and so feel free to demonstrate your point with extremes. What is better with the good study to the not so good one? What are the limitations of a study? So we get to this in the experiments and the observations. So this really just ties everything together. Some of this is review. Apply knowledge from other learning targets in your argument. Some of this is review. What you're really going to be able to do is, like, if I give you something like this, can you, and this is really a good example, what questions do you need to ask? So a researcher may collect information about the amount of weekly exercise people do and cholesterol level. Researchers then may draw the conclusion that for each hour of weekly exercise, an individual can lower their cholesterol by 10%. As a reader of this report, what questions do you need to ask to confirm reliability and validity? So if I go back to the definitions, reliable is the extent to which I can reproduce these results. So if I go and do the same study, am I going to find the same results? Valid is the sample representing the population. The people that were sampled, do they represent the population? Who are the people that were being sampled? Is this older people? Because if you're making a statement saying that each hour of weekly exercise lowers cholesterol by 10%, in who? Like, what age group? How is that relevant? Is that relevant to me? Is it relevant to everybody? Who was sampled? How were they sampled? Okay. What is exercise? Is exercise walking? Is exercise talking? I feel like I'm getting exercise right now. Rigorous exercise, you really have to define it. Okay. And so just asking those questions, making sure we ask questions about reliability and validity. Is there bias present? Is there bias that you wouldn't have thought of? And so what's the bias that's happening? How is the graph displayed? What does the data say? How accurate was the data that was collected? Just keep asking the questions. If we can start to develop these questions in your mind, when you read something like this, so say all that you read is the headline of the newspaper. An hour of weekly exercise lowers cholesterol 10%. And we do it without meaning to. Like, we might see a commercial for the news saying, tune in at 11 o'clock. Who stays up till 11 o'clock to watch the news? Tune in at 11 o'clock to see how 1 hour a week of lowers your cholesterol by 10%. Well, I didn't stay up. I just heard that, and I assume it's true. And it better be true. But we really have to ask the questions to make sure. Researcher asked individuals what brand of fast food is their favorite. At the end of the study, the researcher concludes that restaurant X is the country's favorite fast food restaurant. Do you believe the researcher? Who was the sponsor of this study? If it's McDonald's, then was it done at McDonald's restaurants? Would your opinion change if you discovered that the researcher asked individuals by standing outside the front door? Convenience sample. Okay. A couple of questions you can go back to. I really like these at page 297. Some of the, like, not maybe the original questions, but they ask questions like who was the sponsor, how critically analyze, what questions would you ask. So the example number 3 there on page 296 is really good to walk through, and then you can look at your turn as well. And so there's some really good questions. Some of these are review questions, but for the mastery question, you can see the solutions to the quiz after we take it up. But there's like, you can just go through what you'll be able to what you're going to be asked. Okay.